The stagecoach rattled into Lone Pine, Montana territory on a blistering August afternoon in 1878, carrying a young woman whose trembling hands clutched a worn carpetbag, as if it contained her last shred of dignity. Sarah Peterson pressed her face against the dusty window, watching the rough wooden buildings materialize through clouds of prairie dust. 23 years old and already branded by scandal back east, she had traveled nearly 2,000 miles to become the mail-order bride of a rancher named Wallace Gunderson, a man she had never met but whose stilted letters promised respectability and a fresh start. The shame that clung to her like cheap perfume made her shoulders hunch forward, and she pulled her gray traveling cloak tighter despite the oppressive heat. 6 months ago, she had been engaged to a banker's son in Philadelphia, until his family discovered her mother had been a saloon girl who died of consumption when Sarah was barely 12. The engagement dissolved overnight, and worse, the banker's son spread vicious lies about Sarah herself, claiming she had tried to seduce his father and had worked in establishments no decent woman would enter. The rumors destroyed her reputation so thoroughly that even her position as a seamstress vanished when clients refused her services. The stagecoach lurched to a stop outside the general store, and Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She had written to Mr. Gunderson about her mother's past, feeling honor-bound to disclose it, but she had not mentioned the lies that followed. He had responded that everyone deserved a second chance, and they had agreed to meet today at noon. Through the window, she saw men in dusty work clothes loitering outside the saloon, women in practical calico dresses hurrying past with market baskets, and children chasing a hoop down the wide dirt street. It looked like any other frontier town struggling between civilization and wilderness. "Lone Pine, miss," the driver called down, his weathered face appearing at her window. "You meeting someone?" "Yes, Mr. Wallace Gunderson. Do you know him?" The driver's expression shifted, something like pity flickering across his features. "I know Gunderson. Wait here a moment, miss." He disappeared, and Sarah felt ice crystallize in her stomach despite the heat. Through the opposite window, she watched him approach a man standing outside the saloon, a portly figure in a suit that had seen better days. They spoke briefly, the portly man glancing toward the stagecoach, and then his face twisted into something ugly. He shook his head violently and turned away, disappearing into the saloon without a backward glance. The driver returned, his eyes sympathetic. "I am sorry, miss. Gunderson says he does not want to meet you. Says someone sent him a telegram this morning about your situation, about what happened in Philadelphia." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. The banker's son had found out where she went. He or his family had reached across 2,000 miles to destroy her one chance at redemption. The driver helped her down from the stagecoach, and she stood in the middle of Lone Pine's Main Street with her carpetbag and $17 to her name, more alone than she had ever been in her life. Several townspeople had gathered, their faces ranging from curious to contemptuous. A woman in a fine burgundy dress whispered loudly to her companion, another fallen woman trying to trap a decent man. Shameful. Sarah's cheeks burned, but she held her head high even as tears threatened. She had nowhere to go, no money for return passage, and no home to return to even if she did. The August sun beat down mercilessly, and she felt the weight of every judgmental stare. "Mrs. Johnson runs a boarding house on 2nd Street, the driver said quietly, pressing a card into her hand. "She is not the warmest woman, but she is fair. Might give you a few days to figure things out." "Thank you," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. She picked up her bag and started walking, following the driver's directions to a weathered 2-story building with a hand-painted sign reading Johnson's Rooms. The proprietress, a thin woman with iron-gray hair and harder eyes, looked Sarah up and down with undisguised suspicion. $2 a week, paid in advance. No men in the rooms, no drinking, no noise after 9 o'clock. Sarah paid for 1 week, knowing that left her dangerously little, and climbed the narrow stairs to a small room with a single bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking an alley. She sat on the bed and finally allowed herself to cry, great heaving sobs that shook her entire frame. She had been so careful, so proper her entire life despite her mother's past, and yet here she was, destroyed by lies she could never disprove and a past she had never chosen. Outside, the sounds of Lone Pine continued, indifferent to her despair. Somewhere a blacksmith's hammer rang against an anvil, horses whinnied and stamped, men shouted greetings and curses with equal enthusiasm. Sarah washed her face in the basin of tepid water, changed into her other dress, a faded blue cotton that had been mended at the elbows, and tried to formulate a plan. She needed work, any work, to survive until she could save enough to start over somewhere else. Perhaps farther west in California, where the population was larger and anonymity more possible. The next morning, Sarah began her search for employment. She visited the general store first, where the owner, a Mr. Hendricks, listened to her request with barely concealed skepticism. "Can you keep accounts?" he asked. "Yes, sir. I can read, write, and cipher. I worked as a seamstress and kept my own books." "Where are you from?" "Philadelphia." "And what brings a Philadelphia girl to Lone Pine?" Sarah hesitated, then said simply, "I came to meet someone, but the arrangement fell through." Mr. Hendricks studied her face, his expression unreadable. "I heard about that. Heard other things too. Word travels fast in a small town, and we got a telegram relay station." "I got a wife and daughters, Miss Peterson. I cannot have someone of questionable character working in my establishment." The word stung, but Sarah forced herself to remain composed. "I understand. Thank you for your time." The pattern repeated itself throughout the day. The dressmaker, who might have valued Sarah's sewing skills, turned her away after consulting with another customer who had overheard her inquiry. The hotel restaurant needed a waitress, but the manager took one look at Sarah's face, which apparently someone had already described to him, and claimed the position was filled. By late afternoon, Sarah was exhausted, hungry, and desperate. She had eaten nothing but a piece of bread that morning, trying to conserve her dwindling funds. She was walking past the livery stable, considering whether to try there, despite knowing stable work was typically reserved for men, when a commotion erupted near the hardware store. A horse had broken loose from its hitching post, frightened by a dog, and was rearing and bucking dangerously close to a small boy frozen in terror. Without thinking, Sarah dropped her bag and ran forward, grabbing the boy and rolling with him out of the horse's path, just as its hooves came down where he had been standing. She scraped her hands and knees on the hard, packed dirt, and her already worn dress tore at the shoulder, but the boy was safe. His mother, a young woman with kind eyes, rushed over and pulled him into her arms, tears streaming down her face. Thank you," she sobbed. "You saved his life." A crowd had gathered, and for the first time since arriving in Lone Pine, Sarah saw something other than condemnation in the faces around her. A tall man stepped forward from the group, and Sarah found herself looking up into the most striking face she had ever seen. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-bronzed skin, dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar, and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore dusty work clothes, leather chaps, and a worn hat pushed back on his head, and moved with the easy confidence of someone completely comfortable in his own skin. "That was brave," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate in Sarah's chest. "Are you hurt?" "I am fine," Sarah said, though her palms were bleeding and her knees throbbed. She tried to stand and stumbled slightly, her legs shaky with delayed reaction. The man caught her elbow, steadying her with a gentle grip that somehow made her feel both protected and respected. "Let me at least clean those cuts. I am Yates Crawford. I run a ranch about 5 miles outside town. Sarah Peterson." She saw recognition flicker in his eyes. He had heard about her. She waited for the warmth in his expression to cool, for him to find an excuse to walk away like everyone else had. Instead, he picked up her carpet bag and gestured toward the doctor's office. "Come on. Dr. Mitchell will want to make sure you are not seriously injured." The doctor, a gruff man in his 50s, cleaned Sarah's scrapes with stinging antiseptic and pronounced her fortunate to have escaped with only minor injuries. Through the entire process, Yates Crawford waited in the outer room, his presence somehow reassuring despite Sarah knowing he must have heard the rumors. When she emerged, he was leaning against the wall, examining his hat as if checking for damage, but he straightened immediately. "Can I buy you dinner?" he asked. "Seems like the least I can do after you saved young Tommy Morrison from being trampled." Sarah's pride warred with her hunger and lost. "That is kind of you, Mr. Crawford." "Yates," he corrected, offering his arm. The restaurant at the Lone Pine Hotel served hearty frontier fare, and Sarah tried not to betray how hungry she was as she ate beef stew and fresh bread with butter. Yates ate steadily across from her, occasionally asking gentle questions about her journey from Philadelphia, but never probing into uncomfortable territory. He told her about his ranch, the Running Creek Spread, which he had built from nothing over the past 5 years after saving wages from working other people's cattle drives. "It is not much yet," he said, his eyes distant with dreams. "But the land is good, there is water, and the herd is growing. Another few years, and it will be something to be proud of." "It sounds like you have worked very hard," Sarah said. "Hard work is honest. It is one thing a man can control when so much else is up to chance and weather and cattle prices." He paused, then added quietly, "I heard about what happened yesterday, with Gunderson." Sarah's stomach clenched and she set down her spoon. "Then you know what people are saying." "I know what people are saying," Yates agreed. "That does not mean I know what is true. And even if I did, it would not matter much to me. Out here, we judge people by what they do, not what they have done or what others claim they have done." The words were so unexpected, so completely opposite to everything Sarah had experienced, that she felt tears prick her eyes again. "Why are you being kind to me?" Yates leaned back in his chair, considering her with those steady gray eyes. "My mother was Métis, French and Blackfoot. My father was a trapper who loved her enough to marry her despite what people said. They had 7 good years together before he died in a river crossing accident. After that, my mother tried to raise me alone, but white settlements would not accept her, and her people considered her tainted by her marriage to a white man. She died of pneumonia when I was 14 because no doctor would treat her in time. I learned early that people's judgment often has nothing to do with worth or truth." Sarah stared at him, seeing him more clearly now. The slight copper undertone to his skin, the high cheekbones, the way he moved with a grace that seemed born of wilder places than civilization. "I am sorry about your mother. I am sorry for whatever sent you across the country looking for a new start, and for whatever happened to ruin it," Yates replied. "But I believe in fresh chances, Miss Peterson. This land is big enough for people to be whoever they choose to be, regardless of what they left behind." They finished dinner in companionable silence, and afterward, Yates walked Sarah back to the boarding house. At the door, He hesitated, then said, "I come into town most Saturdays for supplies. If you are still looking for work, my foreman's wife could use help with the household. They live on my property in a small house. The pay is not much, but it includes room and board, and the work is honest." Sarah's heart leaped. "Are you serious?" "I do not joke about employment," Yates said, a hint of humor in his eyes. "But I will warn you, it is isolated. The ranch is 5 miles from town, and during winter, we sometimes do not make it in for weeks at a time. The work is hard, cooking and cleaning and helping with the garden and chickens. My foreman, Pete, and his wife, Martha, are good people, but Martha is expecting their first baby in a few months and could use another woman around. When can I start? I will come by Monday morning with a wagon. Bring what you have." He tipped his hat to her. "Good night, Miss Peterson." "Sarah, please. And thank you, Yates. I cannot tell you what this means." After he left, Sarah climbed the stairs to her room feeling lighter than she had in months. She had 4 days until Monday, enough time to rest and prepare for this unexpected opportunity. That night, she slept deeply for the first time since leaving Philadelphia. Saturday afternoon, Sarah was sitting in the small common room of the boarding house, mending her torn dress, when Mrs. Johnson appeared in the doorway with a pinched expression. "Visitor for you," she said disapprovingly. Sarah looked up, expecting perhaps the mother of the boy she had saved, but instead found herself facing a woman in her 40s with elaborately curled hair and a dress too fine for frontier Montana. The woman's eyes were hard despite her painted smile. "Miss Peterson, I am Loretta Pike. I run an establishment here in Lone Pine, and I wanted to discuss a business proposition with you." Sarah's stomach sank as she realized what kind of establishment Mrs. Pike must run. The older woman's meaning was clear in every studied gesture and knowing look. "I am not interested, Mrs. Pike," Sarah said firmly, setting aside her mending. "Now, do not be hasty, dear. I know your circumstances. Gunderson rejected you, and no one in town will hire you. A girl has to eat. My establishment is clean, respectable as these things go. The men are mostly miners and cowboys passing through, but they pay well, and I take care of my girls." "No, thank you." Sarah stood, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I have found other employment." Mrs. Pike's expression hardened. "With Yates Crawford, I heard. That will not last, dear. He is being charitable now, but charity wears thin quickly. When it does, my door is open. Remember that." After the woman left, Sarah sat back down, her hands shaking. Was that what people assumed about her, that she would end up in a place like Mrs. Pike's? The thought filled her with renewed determination to make this opportunity with Yates work, to prove through her actions that she was not the woman the rumors painted her to be. Sunday, Sarah attended church services, knowing it would be noticed if she did not. The small, whitewashed church was packed, and she felt dozens of eyes tracking her as she slipped into a back pew. The minister, Reverend Hollies, preached about redemption and forgiveness, and Sarah wondered if he knew she was there or if the sermon's theme was coincidental. After the service, most people avoided her, but the woman whose son she had saved, Mrs. Morrison, approached with a warm smile. "Miss Peterson, I wanted to thank you again. Tommy is my only child, and if something had happened to him..." Her eyes filled with tears. "You risked yourself without hesitation. That speaks to character, whatever anyone else might say." "I am glad he was not hurt," Sarah replied, touched by the woman's kindness. "I heard you are going to work at the Running Creek Ranch. That is good. Yates Crawford is a fine man, and Martha has been struggling with the pregnancy. You will be a help to them." Mrs. Morrison squeezed Sarah's hand. "Do not let the gossips get you down. Half of them have stories of their own they are trying to forget." Monday morning arrived with a golden sunrise that painted the mountains surrounding Lone Pine in shades of pink and amber. Sarah was packed and waiting when Yates pulled up in a sturdy wagon drawn by two bay horses. He helped her up to the seat, stowed her bag in the back, and they set off down the main street and out onto the open prairie. The land stretched endlessly in all directions, rolling grassland dotted with sage and occasional stands of pine trees marking creek beds. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still holding snow even in August. The sky seemed impossibly vast, and the air smelled of dust and grass and something wild Sarah had no name for. "It is beautiful," she said, breaking the comfortable silence. "It gets into your blood," Yates agreed. "Some people cannot stand the emptiness. It makes them feel insignificant or exposed, but others find it freeing. No one watching, no one judging, just you and the land and what you make of it." "Is that how you feel most days?" He glanced at her. "I will not lie to you, Sarah. Life out here is hard. The winters are brutal, the work is constant, and sometimes we lose cattle to weather or predators or disease despite doing everything right. But it is mine, built with my own hands and sweat. That matters to me." They rode in silence for a while longer, then Yates pointed ahead. "There. That is Running Creek." The ranch appeared gradually, nestled in a valley where a creek did indeed run, lined with cottonwood trees just beginning to show their autumn gold. The main house was a solid log structure, larger than Sarah expected, with a covered porch and glass windows that must have cost dearly to transport. Nearby stood a smaller cabin, a barn, several corrals, and various outbuildings. Horses grazed in a nearby pasture, and Sarah could see cattle scattered across the hillsides. A man emerged from the barn as they approached, waving. He was shorter than Yates, stocky and strong, with red hair and a cheerful, freckled face. A woman followed him, heavily pregnant and moving carefully, with light brown hair pulled back in a practical bun. "That is Pete and Martha," Yates said, pulling the wagon to a stop. "Pete has been with me since the beginning. I could not run this place without him." Pete helped Sarah down while Martha smiled warmly. "Miss Peterson, welcome. I cannot tell you how relieved I am that you are here. I have been trying to keep up with everything, but lately, just walking across the yard wins me. Please call me Sarah. And I am grateful for the opportunity to help." Martha showed Sarah to a small room in the cabin, clean and simply furnished with a bed, dresser, washstand, and a rag rug on the wooden floor. A window looked out toward the main house and the mountains beyond. "It is not fancy," Martha said apologetically, "but the roof does not leak and the stove keeps things warm in winter." "It is perfect," Sarah said honestly. After the cramped boarding house room and the uncertainty of the past days, this felt like sanctuary. That afternoon, Martha walked Sarah through her duties. She would help with cooking for the men who worked the ranch, currently just Yates and Pete, but sometimes including temporary hands during busy seasons. She would assist with the enormous amount of laundry that ranch work generated, help Martha with the vegetable garden and preserving for winter, care for the chickens and collect eggs, and handle general household tasks. In return, she would have room and board and $20 a month. $20, Sarah repeated, stunned. That was generous for household work. "Yates insisted," Martha said. "He said you deserved fair wages for fair work, same as any hand." She paused, then added gently, "He told us about your situation, Sarah. Just the basics, that you came out to marry someone who changed his mind, and that people have been unkind. He did not share any details, and we do not need to know them. What matters to us is the work you do and the person you are from this day forward." Sarah felt tears threaten again and blinked them back. "Thank you. I will work hard, I promise." I believe you, Martha said simply. That evening, Sarah prepared her first meal at the Running Creek Ranch, a simple but hearty dinner of fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans from the garden, and biscuits. The four of them ate together at the table in the main house, which surprised Sarah. She had expected to eat separately, as servants often did, but Yates would not hear of it. "We are all part of this operation," he said. "No reason not to eat together." The conversation flowed easily, mostly Pete and Martha sharing stories about life on the ranch and explaining how things worked. Yates spoke less but listened intently, occasionally adding a comment or asking Sarah questions about her preferences for organizing the household work. He treated her with the same respect he showed Pete and Martha, never condescending or making her feel lesser despite her position. After dinner, Pete and Martha returned to their cabin and Sarah helped Yates clean up. They worked in companionable silence, Sarah washing dishes while Yates dried and put them away in the cupboard. "This feels strange," Sarah admitted. "What does?" "Being here. Being treated like a normal person instead of a pariah." Yates set down the dish he was drying and turned to face her. "Sarah, whatever happened to you in Philadelphia, whatever rumors followed you here, they do not matter to me. I meant what I said the other night. Your past does not define you here. Only your actions do. And everything I have seen of your actions tells me you are a good person who has been treated badly." Sarah met his eyes, those steady gray eyes that seemed to see right through her defenses. "You do not even know what people say about me." "Then tell me if you want, or do not. Either way, it changes nothing." The offer hung in the air between them. Sarah had not spoken the full story to anyone, had carried the shame and hurt locked inside her like a festering wound. But something about Yates, about his calm acceptance and the safety of this place far from judgmental eyes, made her want to unburden herself. "My mother was a saloon girl," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "She was not a prostitute, just a girl who served drinks and danced with lonely men for money. But she got pregnant by someone who did not want her or the baby. She raised me alone, working in saloons until she got sick. Consumption took her slowly. I was 12 when she died. A family friend took me in, taught me sewing. I worked hard, built a respectable life despite my background. Then I got engaged to a banker's son. His family found out about my mother and ended the engagement. The son was angry, I think embarrassed, so he spread lies. Told people I had tried to seduce his father, that I had worked as a prostitute like he claimed my mother was. None of it was true, but truth does not matter when rich people tell lies. Everyone believed him. I lost my work, my reputation, everything. So I answered an advertisement for mail-order brides, hoping to start over. But somehow, even here, the lies found me." Yates listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, then said, "Thank you for trusting me with that. And I am sorry you went through it. People can be cruel, especially when they are protecting their own sense of superiority. But their cruelty says everything about them and nothing about you. How can you be so sure? You do not really know me. I know you jumped in front of a horse to save a child. I know you carry yourself with dignity despite being treated shamefully. I know you are willing to work hard and start over in a strange place rather than give up. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." He picked up the dish towel again. "Besides, I am a good judge of people. Comes from working with animals. Horses and cattle do not care about your family or your past. They only care about how you treat them in the moment. I have found that is a pretty good philosophy for humans too." Sarah smiled despite the tears on her cheeks. "You are an unusual man, Yates Crawford. I will take that as a compliment." The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Sarah rose before dawn to prepare breakfast, then tackled the various household tasks that had been piling up during Martha's difficult pregnancy. She found she enjoyed the work's physicality, the way it kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. Martha was a cheerful companion, grateful for the help and eager to share her knowledge of frontier housekeeping, which was quite different from running a household in Philadelphia. The Montana weather proved as changeable as advertised. One day would be hot and dry, the next cold and rainy. Sarah learned to check the sky constantly and bring in laundry at the first sign of clouds. She learned which hens were reliable layers and which were broody, how to tell when the bread dough had risen enough, and how to preserve vegetables for the long winter ahead. Yates and Pete worked from dawn until well past dusk, repairing fences, moving cattle to fresh grazing, cutting hay for winter feed, and 1,000 other tasks that keeping a ranch running required. Sarah saw Yates mostly at meals, but she found herself increasingly aware of his presence. The way he moved with unconscious grace, the way his rare smiles transformed his serious face, the gentleness with which he handled the horses despite his strength. He never treated her as anything but an equal, asking her opinions on household matters and listening carefully to her suggestions. 2 weeks after Sarah's arrival, a group of men rode onto the ranch just before dinner. Sarah watched from the kitchen window as Yates greeted them, his body language suggesting he knew them but was not particularly pleased by their visit. The men looked rough, wearing dusty clothes and carrying themselves with a swagger that made Sarah uneasy. One of them, a tall man with a black beard, seemed to be doing most of the talking, gesturing emphatically while Yates listened with crossed arms. After several minutes, Yates shook his head firmly, and the bearded man's expression darkened. Words were exchanged that Sarah could not hear. Then the group mounted up and rode off, the bearded man shouting something back over his shoulder that made Pete, who had joined Yates, spit on the ground in disgust. At dinner, Sarah asked, "Who were those men?" "Trouble," Pete said bluntly. "The bearded fellow is Cass Brennan. He runs a large spread north of here and thinks he owns the whole territory. He has been trying to buy out the smaller ranchers, including us, to consolidate the land. He is not interested in a fair sale," Yates added, his voice tight with controlled anger. "He wants to intimidate people into selling cheap or simply drive them out. He has been running his cattle onto other people's grazing land, damming creeks that water multiple properties, and generally making himself a menace." "Is he dangerous?" Sarah asked, thinking of the man's cold eyes. "He has not crossed the line into outright violence yet, but he skirts close to it. He knows the territorial law is spread thin out here and mostly counts on people backing down rather than fighting." Yates met her eyes across the table. "I am not going to back down. This ranch is mine, built with honest work and legal claim. Brennan does not get to take that because he is bigger and meaner." "What did he say to you today?" Martha asked, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. "Same thing as always. That he is willing to pay a fair price for my land, but that if I do not take his offer, he cannot guarantee my cattle will not stray onto his property, or that my water will not mysteriously stop flowing." Threats wrapped in friendly concern. Yates pushed his plate away, his appetite clearly gone. "I filed complaints with the territorial marshal, but the nearest one is 3 days' ride away and has bigger problems than feuding ranchers." The conversation moved to other topics, but Sarah noticed Yates remained tense throughout the meal. After Pete and Martha left, Sarah lingered, cleaning up the kitchen while Yates sat at the table reviewing his account books by lamplight. Outside, the sun had set, and the darkness pressed against the windows like something solid. "Yates," Sarah said quietly, "should I be worried?" Should Martha be worried? He looked up, his face drawn with exhaustion. Brennan is a bully, but he is not stupid. He will not do anything that could bring down the real law on his head. I think we are safe enough, but I have asked Pete to keep a rifle near the barn, and I sleep with one by my bed. Just precautions. Sarah felt a chill despite the warm kitchen. The frontier's dangers felt suddenly very real, not just abstract concepts from dime novels. What will you do if he keeps pushing? What I have to do. This land is all I have, Sarah. It is my future, my security, proof that someone like me can build something that matters. I will not give it up without a fight. The fierceness in his voice stirred something in Sarah's chest, a mixture of admiration and fear. I hope it does not come to that. So do I. September arrived with cooler temperatures and the first hints of autumn color in the cottonwoods. Martha's time was drawing near, and Sarah took over more of the household work, allowing the pregnant woman to rest. She also began helping Pete with some of the lighter outdoor tasks, feeding the chickens and horses, and occasionally helping move cattle from one pasture to another under Pete's careful supervision. It was during one of these cattle-moving operations that Sarah found herself working directly with Yates for the first time. They were moving a small group of cows and calves to a pasture closer to the barn for the approaching winter, and Sarah rode an old gentle mare named Daisy, following Yates's instructions to keep the animals moving in the right direction. "You are a natural," Yates called to her as she smoothly cut off a cow trying to break away from the group. "Have you worked cattle before?" "Never," Sarah called back, laughing at the absurdity. 2 months ago, the closest I had been to a cow was buying milk from a vendor. Yates grinned, a rare expression that made him look years younger. Could have fooled me. They worked together for several hours, and Sarah found herself watching Yates when she thought he was not looking. The way he sat his horse as if born to the saddle, the easy confidence with which he read the cattle's movements and anticipated their attempts to stray, the gentleness underlying his firm control. He was completely in his element here, and Sarah found that attractive in a way she had not expected. When they finally had the cattle settled in their new pasture, Yates rode up beside her. "Thank you for the help. That would have taken Pete and me twice as long on our own." "I enjoyed it," Sarah admitted. "It felt good to do something different, to be outside. You are welcome to help anytime." "I know the household work is important, but I remember my mother feeling trapped when she spent too much time inside. She used to say women were not meant to live in boxes any more than men were." "Your mother sounds like she was wise." "She was." Yates looked out across the land, his expression distant. "She loved the wild places. My father used to joke that she married him just so she could keep living in the mountains and forests instead of settling down. I think there was some truth to it. You remember her well. Every day. She taught me to read the weather, to move quietly through the forest, to respect the land and animals. She told me stories about her people, the Métis communities along the rivers, the way they lived between two worlds and made something unique from both." His voice grew quiet. "She also taught me that the world would judge me for my mixed blood, that I would have to be twice as good to get half the respect. She was right about that." Sarah urged her horse closer so their legs were nearly touching. "Is that why you helped me?" "Because you understand what it is like to be judged for things beyond your control." "Partly." Yates turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gray eyes made Sarah's breath catch. "But mostly because, from the moment I saw you roll across the ground with that boy, putting yourself between him and danger without a thought for yourself, I thought you were the bravest person I had ever met. And then, when you held your head high while people whispered about you, when you kept your dignity even though I could see it was killing you inside, I knew you were also the strongest. I wanted to know you, Sarah. I wanted to give you a chance to be whoever you truly are, without the weight of other people's judgments. Sarah's heart pounded so hard she was sure he could hear it. That is the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me. It is just the truth. He looked like he wanted to say more, but instead he clicked his tongue to his horse. We should head back. I am sure Martha will have something to say about me keeping you out here so long. They rode back in silence, but it was a different quality of silence than before, charged with an awareness that had not been there in the morning. That evening after dinner, Sarah sat on the porch of the cabin, enjoying the cool air and the spectacular sunset painting the western sky in shades of orange and purple. She heard footsteps and turned to see Yates approaching, his hat in his hands. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. "Please." He settled onto the porch step beside her, leaving a respectable distance between them. For a while they watched the sunset in comfortable quiet, then Yates said, "I need to tell you something." Sarah's stomach clenched. "All right." "I have been thinking a lot lately about the future, about what I want this ranch to become. It is a good operation, profitable enough, but it is incomplete somehow. I have realized what is missing." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "A partner. Not just someone to help with the work, but someone to build a life with, someone to share the burdens and the triumphs." Sarah's breath caught. "Yates, I know it has only been a month since you arrived. I know you came here running from one failed marriage arrangement and probably are not interested in jumping into another. But I cannot keep pretending I see you only as an employee or even just a friend. Sarah, you have become important to me. The way you have fit into life here, the way you handle everything with such grace and strength, the way you make me laugh when I am tired and frustrated. I find myself looking for excuses to be near you, watching for your smile, wanting to share every small thing that happens, because it is not quite real until I have told you about it." "I feel the same way," Sarah whispered. "I have been trying not to, trying to be sensible and cautious after what happened with my engagement. But you are not like anyone I have ever known, Yates. You make me feel safe and valued and seen in a way I never have before." "I want to court you properly," Yates said. "I know the circumstances are unusual, with us living on the same property and working together, but I want to do this right. I want you to be sure, to have time to know me and decide if this is truly what you want. How do we court when we see each other every day and work together?" Yates smiled. "We take time that is separate from work. I take you on rides to see the land. We sit together in the evenings and talk about things beyond cattle and supplies and weather. I bring you flowers from the meadow and act foolishly smitten, which I am. And we see if what we both feel grows into something strong enough to last through hard times and isolation, and all the challenges this life will throw at us." Sarah found herself smiling back, her heart feeling lighter than it had in years. "I would like that very much." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and took her hand. His palm was calloused from years of hard work, warm and strong, and Sarah felt the contact all the way to her core. "Then we will start tomorrow," Yates said. "After work, I will take you to my favorite spot on the ranch. Bring a warm coat. It gets cold up in the high pasture." True to his word, the next evening Yates had 2 horses saddled and waiting after dinner. Sarah put on her warmest shawl, and they rode out together as the sun began its descent toward the mountains. They rode for nearly an hour, climbing steadily into the hills behind the ranch, until they emerged onto a high meadow surrounded by pines. The view was breathtaking. The entire valley spread below them, the ranch buildings looking like children's toys, the creek a silver ribbon threading through the land. "This is where I camped when I first found this land," Yates said, dismounting and helping Sarah down. "I knew immediately that I wanted to build here. that this was where I was meant to be. They sat on a flat rock still warm from the day's sun, and Yates pointed out landmarks, telling her stories about the land and his dreams for the ranch's future. Sarah listened, asking questions, and gradually they moved from talking about the ranch to talking about everything else, their childhoods and disappointments and hopes and fears. Sarah told him more about her mother, the good memories she had before the consumption had ravaged her, the way she had sung while working and told Sarah she could be anything she wanted despite the circumstances of her birth. "She would have liked you," Sarah said. "She always said to judge people by their actions and their hearts, not their circumstances." "I would have liked her too," Yates replied. The sun set slowly, painting the sky in impossible colors, and Yates moved closer, his arm going around Sarah's shoulders when she shivered in the cooling air. She leaned into his warmth, feeling safe and content in a way she had not known was possible. "Sarah," Yates said quietly, "I want you to know something. Whatever happens between us, you always have a place here. If you decide you do not want to pursue this, that you want to move on or try for a life in California or anywhere else, I will help you. I will give you excellent references and make sure you have the money to start fresh. Your job here is not contingent on returning my feelings. I need you to know that." Sarah twisted to look up at him. "That is a very honorable thing to say. I want you to choose me if you do because you truly want to, not because you feel obligated or trapped by circumstances." "I do not feel trapped," Sarah said firmly. "For the first time since my mother died, I feel free. Free to be myself, to work hard and be valued for it, to dream about a future that is not defined by other people's judgments. You gave me that, Yates." He cupped her face in his hand, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with heartbreaking gentleness. "You gave that to yourself. I just provided the space for it to happen." "May I kiss you?" Sarah asked, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess them. Yates smiled, slow and warm. "I thought you would never ask." The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory, but it deepened as Sarah felt years of fear and shame and hurt melting away under the warmth of Yates's acceptance and desire. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, and Yates rested his forehead against hers. "We should head back before it gets too dark," he said reluctantly. "I suppose we should." But neither of them moved for several long minutes, content to sit together in the gathering darkness, the stars beginning to emerge overhead in numbers Sarah had never seen in Philadelphia's light-polluted skies. The courtship that followed was unlike any Sarah could have imagined. They still worked together during the day, but Yates found small ways to show his affection, leaving wildflowers on the kitchen windowsill, taking over her heavier chores when he knew she was tired, sitting beside her at meals and letting their shoulders touch. In the evenings, they took long rides together, exploring the ranch and the surrounding countryside, or sat on the porch talking until the cold drove them inside. Pete and Martha watched the developing romance with obvious approval. "About time Yates found someone," Pete said one morning while helping Sarah carry water from the well. "He has been alone too long, working himself into the ground with nothing to look forward to beyond the next season." "He has the ranch," Sarah said. "A ranch is not enough for a man long term. It is a means to an end, not the end itself. A man needs someone to build a life with, someone to make the work mean something." Pete grinned at her. "Plus, Martha has been after me to play matchmaker for months. She will be insufferably smug that you two figured it out on your own." In mid-September, Martha went into labor. Sarah had assisted at births before during her time in Philadelphia, helping the woman who had taken her in after her mother's death, so she was prepared for the long hours of work ahead. But preparation did not make it easy, especially as the labor stretched through the night and into the next day. Pete paced frantically outside while Yates tried to keep him calm and occupied with chores. Finally, just after dawn, a baby's cry filled the cabin. Sarah emerged exhausted but smiling. A boy. Mother and baby are both healthy. Pete rushed inside while Yates caught Sarah as she swayed with fatigue. "You are amazing," he said, supporting her weight. "Come on, let me get you some food and coffee before you fall over." In the main house, he settled her at the table and prepared a meal with surprising competence. Scrambled eggs and toast and strong coffee that Sarah drank gratefully. Yates sat across from her, his own exhaustion evident in the lines around his eyes. "It is strange," Sarah said, "how much can change in such a short time. 2 months ago, I was standing in the street in Lone Pine with nowhere to go and no hope. Now I am helping deliver babies and falling in love with a cowboy in Montana territory." "Are you?" Yates asked quietly. "Falling in love?" Sarah met his eyes steadily. "Yes, I think I have been since that first night when you told me my past did not define me here. Sarah, I love you. I have for weeks, but I did not want to rush you or make you feel pressured, but I cannot keep holding it back. I love your strength and your kindness and your resilience. I love how you throw yourself completely into everything you do, whether it is delivering a baby or learning to move cattle or making the perfect biscuits. I love how you make this house feel like a home instead of just a place I sleep. I want to marry you, not because you are convenient or because you need security, but because I cannot imagine building my future with anyone else." Tears streamed down Sarah's face, but she was smiling. "Yes. Yes, you will marry me. Yes, I will marry you. I love you, Yates. You showed me who I could be when I was not carrying the weight of shame and judgment. You gave me space to heal and grow and become someone I am proud to be. I want to build this life with you, to face whatever comes together." Yates stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. Sarah buried her face in his shoulder, breathing in the scent of him, horse and leather and soap and something uniquely Yates. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other, until Pete's voice calling from outside broke the spell. "Martha wants to see you both." In the cabin, Martha sat propped up in bed, looking exhausted but radiant, with the baby sleeping in her arms. The infant was tiny and red-faced with a shock of dark hair. "His name is James," Martha said proudly. "James Yates, after the man who gave us a chance when no one else would." Yates looked stunned and touched. "Martha, you did not have to do that. We wanted to," Pete said firmly. "You are family, Yates, you and Sarah both." Later that day, after everyone had rested and the initial chaos of the birth had settled, Yates and Sarah rode into Lone Pine to file notice of their intention to marry and to buy a ring. The town was busy with Saturday shoppers, and Sarah felt eyes following them as they walked down the main street together, Yates's hand at the small of her back. At the general store, Mr. Hendricks, who had refused Sarah employment weeks earlier, looked uncomfortable as they examined the small selection of rings in his jewelry case. "I heard you are working out at the Running Creek Ranch," he said to Sarah. "Working out well, is it?" "Very well," Sarah replied coolly. "Yates and I are getting married." Hendricks looked surprised, then calculating. "Well, congratulations. That is fine news. Perhaps Mrs. Hendricks and my daughters could call on you sometime, welcome you properly to the community." "That would be nice," Sarah said, though she did not believe it would happen. People's minds changed slowly, if at all. Yates selected a simple gold band that fit Sarah's finger perfectly. As he slid it on to check the size, he said quietly, "This is just the engagement ring. After we are married, I will get you a proper wedding band." "This is perfect," Sarah assured him. "I do not need anything fancy." Outside the store, they ran into Mrs. Morrison, who greeted them warmly and immediately noticed the ring. Oh, how wonderful! You two are perfect for each other. When is the wedding? We were hoping Reverend Hollies could do it in 2 weeks, Yates said. Just a simple ceremony, nothing elaborate. You must let me help, Mrs. Morrison insisted. I am not much of a cook, but I can organize the ladies of the church to prepare a meal afterward. Every wedding deserves a proper celebration. Sarah was touched by the offer. That is very kind of you. As they walked back to the wagon, Sarah said, "People are starting to accept me. People are starting to see what I saw all along," Yates corrected. That you are a woman of character and strength. Give them time. Most of them will come around eventually. And those who do not, their loss, not ours. The 2 weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of preparation. Martha, still recovering from childbirth, directed operations from her bed, telling Sarah where to find Yates's mother's wedding shawl and various other items that should be incorporated into the ceremony. Pete and Yates worked frantically to get ahead on ranch work so they could take a few days off after the wedding. Sarah sewed herself a new dress, a simple but elegant design in dark blue wool that would be practical for wear afterward, unlike a white gown that would hang unused in the wardrobe. The night before the wedding, Sarah sat alone in her room at the cabin, suddenly struck by the magnitude of what she was about to do. She was marrying a man she had known for less than 2 months, committing herself to a life on the frontier that she had barely begun to understand. Was she being foolish, rushing into something because she was grateful and had nowhere else to go? But no, that was not fair to either of them. She loved Yates, truly loved him in a way she had never loved her banker's son back in Philadelphia. She loved his quiet strength and his fundamental decency, the way he treated everyone with respect regardless of their background, the gentleness underlying his physical power. She loved how he made her feel capable and valued, how he challenged her to try new things but never made her feel inadequate when she struggled. She loved his dreams for the future and wanted to be part of making them real. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Martha entered, moving carefully without the baby. "Pete is watching James so I could come talk to you. I figured you might be having some last-minute doubts. Is it that obvious? It would be strange if you were not. You are about to marry a man you barely know and commit to a life that is probably nothing like what you imagined for yourself." Martha sat on the bed beside Sarah. "But I want you to know something. I have known Yates Crawford for 5 years, since Pete first came to work for him. In that time, I have never seen him happier than he has been since you arrived. You have given him something to live for beyond just survival and work, and he has done the same for you. That is what marriage should be, 2 people making each other better, building something together that neither could build alone." "What if I cannot handle it?" Sarah asked quietly. "The isolation, the hard work, the constant uncertainty." "Then you will learn, just like I did, just like every woman out here has to learn. And you will have Yates beside you and Pete and me and eventually neighbors and friends. You are stronger than you think, Sarah. You have already survived things that would have broken weaker people." Martha's words steadied her, and by the time the older woman left, Sarah felt ready to face the next day. The wedding took place on a perfect October afternoon, the autumn colors at their peak and the air crisp but not cold. Reverend Hollies performed the ceremony in the small church, which was surprisingly full. Mrs. Morrison and several other women from town attended, along with a few ranchers from neighboring properties and their families. Sarah had not expected such a turnout and was moved by it. She walked down the short aisle alone, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers that Pete had picked that morning. Yates stood at the front of the church in his best clothes, his dark hair neatly combed, his gray eyes locked on her with an intensity that made Sarah's heart race. When she reached him, he took her hand and whispered, You are beautiful." The ceremony was brief and traditional. Sarah and Yates exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever hardships and joys lay ahead. When Reverend Hollis pronounced them husband and wife, Yates kissed Sarah with a tenderness that brought tears to many eyes in the congregation. Afterward, the community indeed had prepared a celebration at the church hall, tables laden with food and someone producing a fiddle for dancing. Sarah found herself swept into the festivities, meeting ranchers and townspeople who treated her with kindness and welcome, most making no mention of the scandalous circumstances of her arrival. Mrs. Morrison pulled Sarah aside at one point and said, "You see, I told you things would work out. Give people time to see who you really are, and most will judge you fairly." "Thank you," Sarah said, "for being kind when others were not." "We frontier women have to stick together," Mrs. Morrison replied with a smile. As the sun set, Yates and Sarah left the celebration and rode back to the ranch. Pete and Martha had tactfully moved to the barn for the night, claiming baby James slept better there away from the house noise, leaving the main house to the newlyweds. Sarah's things had been moved from the cabin into Yates's bedroom earlier in the day, a symbolic joining that made everything feel suddenly very real. Inside the house, alone for the first time as husband and wife, Sarah felt suddenly nervous. Yates seemed to sense it and took her hands. "We do not have to do anything you are not ready for. We have the rest of our lives together." "I want this," Sarah assured him. "I am just overwhelmed by everything. This morning I woke up as Sarah Peterson, alone and uncertain. Now I am Sarah Crawford, married to the man I love, with a future ahead of me that actually looks bright instead of terrifying." "Sarah Crawford," Yates repeated, smiling. "I like the sound of that." He pulled her close and kissed her, slowly and deeply, and Sarah felt herself relaxing into his embrace. Whatever awkwardness she had feared dissolved as they came together with love and tenderness, and a passion that left them both breathless and amazed. Afterward, lying in Yates's arms in the darkness, listening to his steady heartbeat beneath her ear, Sarah thought about how impossible this would have seemed just 3 months ago. She had come to Montana territory expecting to marry a stranger out of desperation, and instead had found genuine love with a man who valued her for exactly who she was. "What are you thinking?" Yates asked, his voice rumbling in his chest. "That I am glad Wallace Gunderson rejected me. If he had not, I would never have met you." Yates laughed quietly. "I have thought the same thing. I should thank him someday, though I would probably punch him first for treating you so badly." "Violence is not the answer," Sarah said primly, then giggled, "though I appreciate the sentiment." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, the house quiet around them and the future stretching ahead full of possibility. The first months of marriage brought their own challenges and adjustments. Sharing space with another person, learning each other's habits and preferences, navigating the intimacy of daily life together required patience and communication. But Sarah and Yates approached it with the same determination they brought to everything else, talking through disagreements and making compromises when their approaches differed. Winter came early and hard that year, with snow falling in November and temperatures dropping well below freezing. The ranch work became a daily battle against the elements, keeping livestock fed and watered, preventing pipes from freezing, maintaining the buildings against the wind and snow. Sarah learned to dress in layers of wool and fur, to move quickly between buildings to minimize exposure, to read the signs of frostbite and hypothermia. She also learned that winter on the ranch could be beautiful. The land transformed into a pristine white wilderness, the silence profound except for the wind and the occasional call of wildlife. On clear nights, the stars seemed close enough to touch, and the northern lights sometimes danced across the sky in ribbons of green and purple. She and Yates would stand on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching the display in awed silence. In December, a blizzard hit that lasted 3 days, piling snow higher than the fence posts and making it impossible to see more than a few feet. Yates and Pete had to string ropes between the buildings to keep from getting lost during chores. The cattle huddled in the lee of hills and windbreaks, and several calves were lost despite everyone's best efforts. When the storm finally cleared, the amount of work required to dig out and assess the damage was staggering. But through it all, Sarah and Yates grew closer. The adversity they faced together forged their bond stronger than easy times could have. Sarah discovered reserves of strength and endurance she had not known she possessed, and Yates's respect and admiration for her continued to grow. "You are tougher than most men I have worked with," he told her one night as they sat by the fire, both exhausted from digging through snowdrifts to reach trapped cattle. "And smarter than all of them." "I had a good teacher," Sarah replied, squeezing his hand. Christmas brought a welcome break from the relentless work. Sarah prepared a special meal, using some of their precious stores to make a feast. Pete and Martha came to dinner with baby James, now 3 months old and growing rapidly. They exchanged simple gifts, mostly practical items but given with love. Yates presented Sarah with a beautiful set of leather gloves he had made himself, perfectly fitted to her hands and decorated with intricate beading in the Métis style his mother had taught him. "They are beautiful," Sarah breathed, running her fingers over the delicate beadwork. "You made these." "I have not done beadwork since I was a boy, but I wanted to give you something that connected to my heritage, to share that part of myself with you." Sarah kissed him. "Thank you." "They are perfect." Her gift to him was a new shirt she had sewn in secret, using fabric she had ordered from a catalog with her carefully saved wages. It was dark red flannel, sturdy but softer than his usual work shirts, and she had embroidered his initials on the pocket in black thread. "Now I will be the best-dressed rancher in Montana Territory," Yates joked, but his eyes were suspiciously bright. In January, word reached them that Cass Brennan had succeeded in driving out another small rancher to the east, essentially stealing the land through intimidation and legal manipulation. The news cast a pall over dinner that night. "He is getting bolder," Pete said grimly. "Sooner or later he will make another move on us." "Let him try," Yates said, his jaw set. "We have legal title to this land, and I have documented every attempt he has made to interfere with our operations. If he pushes too hard, I will ride to the territorial capital myself and file formal charges." "That is a 2-week journey in winter," Sarah protested. "And you said yourself the territorial government is overwhelmed." "I know, but I will not just roll over and let him take what we have built." Yates reached for Sarah's hand. "I promise you, I will not do anything reckless, but I also will not be driven off our land." In February, Brennan made his move. Sarah was alone in the house, Martha having taken the baby back to their cabin for his nap, when she heard horses approaching. Looking out, she saw 5 men riding up, Brennan in the lead. Fear spiked through her, but she forced herself to remain calm. Yates and Pete were out checking on cattle in the far pasture and would not return for hours. She stepped onto the porch, crossing her arms against the cold. "Mr. Brennan." "What can I do for you?" Brennan dismounted, his men staying on their horses. Up close, he was even more intimidating than Sarah remembered, tall and broad with cold eyes that assessed her like livestock. "Mrs. Crawford, your husband around? He is out working. I expect him back soon." The lie came easily. "You can state your business to me." "My business is with Crawford, not his wife. I am his partner in this ranch. Anything you have to say to him, you can say to me." Brennan's eyes narrowed. "Fine. Tell your husband this is his last chance. I am offering $3,000 for this property, the buildings, and all livestock. That is more than fair, and it is the last offer he will get. If he does not accept it, I cannot guarantee your safety out here. Accidents happen on the frontier. People get hurt, buildings catch fire, cattle stampede. It would be a shame if something happened to such a pretty little wife." The threat was barely veiled, and Sarah felt ice in her veins, but she refused to show fear. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Brennan?" "Just stating facts, Mrs. Crawford. This is dangerous country. You should convince your husband to take my offer and move somewhere safer." "My husband and I are not interested in selling. This is our home, and we are not going anywhere. Now I suggest you leave our property before my husband returns and finds you harassing his wife." Brennan's face darkened. "You are making a mistake. The only mistake would be letting bullies like you take what does not belong to them. Good day, Mr. Brennan." She turned and walked back into the house, forcing herself not to run, not to show the terror coursing through her. Inside, she grabbed the rifle Yates kept by the door and positioned herself at the window where she could see the yard. Brennan stared at the house for a long moment, then remounted and rode off with his men. Sarah's hands shook as she set down the rifle. She knew she needed to tell Yates what had happened, but she also knew it would escalate the situation. Still, he deserved to know, especially about the barely veiled threat. When Yates and Pete returned at dusk, Sarah told them everything. Yates's face went white, then red with fury. "He threatened you. He came onto our land and threatened my wife. He was careful not to say anything explicit," Sarah said, "but the message was clear. That is it. Tomorrow I ride to the territorial capital. This has gone too far. Yates, it is winter. The journey could kill you. And staying here could get us all killed, or at least lose everything we have worked for." He pulled Sarah into his arms. "I am sorry. I am so sorry he frightened you." "I was not frightened," Sarah lied, then amended. "All right, I was terrified, but I did not let him see it." "You are the bravest person I know," Yates said into her hair. Pete cleared his throat. "I will ride with you. 2 men are safer than 1, and Martha can stay here with Sarah. Between them and my rifle, they will be all right for the time we are gone." The next morning, despite Sarah's protests and fears, Yates and Pete set out for Helena, the territorial capital. The journey would take at least 10 days in good conditions, possibly longer if they hit storms. They packed carefully, taking extra supplies and ammunition, and Yates left detailed instructions about running the ranch in their absence. Before he mounted his horse, Yates pulled Sarah aside. "If Brennan comes back, do not confront him. Hide if you can, shoot if you must. Your safety is more important than anything else. Come back to me," Sarah whispered, holding him tightly. "I promise." She watched them ride away until they disappeared over the hills, then turned back to the house where Martha waited with baby James. The 2 women looked at each other, both afraid but determined not to show it. "Well," Martha said briskly, "we have work to do. The cattle will not feed themselves." The days that followed were the longest of Sarah's life. She and Martha worked together to maintain the ranch operations, feeding livestock, collecting eggs, keeping the buildings functional. Every night, Sarah lay alone in the bed she shared with Yates, unable to sleep for worry. What if he encountered a storm? What if Brennan found out he had left and sent men after him? What if he made it to Helena, but the territorial authorities refused to help? On the 5th day after Yates's departure, 3 riders appeared on the horizon. Sarah's heart leaped into her throat, but as they drew closer she realized they were not Brennan's men. They were ranchers from neighboring properties, men Yates knew casually. The leader, an older man named Jack Sutherland, doffed his hat. "Mrs. Crawford." We heard Yates rode to Helena and that you ladies were here alone. Thought we would check in, make sure you are managing all right." "That is kind of you, Mr. Sutherland. We are managing, but I would be lying if I said we were not worried." "Understandable. We also heard about Brennan's visit. That man is a cancer on this territory, and it is past time someone stood up to him officially. We wanted you to know that several of us have agreed to keep an eye on your property while Yates is gone. If you see anyone suspicious, fire 3 shots and we will come running." Sarah felt tears of gratitude prick her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Over the following days, the neighboring ranchers made good on their promise, riding by daily to check on the women and help with heavier tasks. Sarah realized that while Lone Pine Society had initially rejected her, the wider ranching community operated on different principles. Out here, people helped each other survive, and Yates's stand against Brennan had earned him respect and support. On the 12th day, Sarah was hanging laundry despite the cold when she saw 2 riders approaching from the east. Her heart hammered as she recognized Yates's horse, then Yates himself, and finally Pete beside him. She dropped the laundry basket and ran to meet them, heedless of the snow and cold. Yates dismounted and caught her in his arms, lifting her off the ground and burying his face in her neck. "I missed you so much. Did you succeed? Will they help?" "Yes and yes." The territorial marshal is sending deputies to investigate Brennan's activities and take sworn statements from everyone he has threatened or intimidated. It will not be fast, but it is official now. Brennan's actions are under scrutiny, and he will have to back off or face federal charges. That night, reunited in their bed, Sarah and Yates held each other close. "I was so afraid something would happen to you," Sarah whispered. "I could not bear to lose you." "You will not lose me. I am too stubborn to die young." He kissed her forehead. "But I never want to leave you like that again. Whatever we face going forward, we face together." "Together," Sarah agreed. The territorial marshal's investigation proceeded slowly through the remaining winter months, but Brennan kept his distance, aware that he was now being watched. In March, formal charges were filed against him for illegal appropriation of water rights and intimidation. He was forced to pay restitution to several ranchers he had wronged, and warned that any future violations would result in imprisonment. With that threat neutralized, life on the Running Creek Ranch settled into a more peaceful rhythm. Spring brought new calves, and the exhausting work of branding and moving cattle to summer pastures. Sarah had become an accomplished horsewoman and worked alongside Yates and Pete, no longer just helping but functioning as a full partner in the operation. In April, Sarah realized she had missed her monthly courses. At first, she attributed it to stress and the physical demands of ranch work, but when a second month passed and she found herself nauseated every morning, she knew. She was pregnant. She told Yates one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, a ritual they had maintained since their courting days. "I have something to tell you." He turned to her, immediately attentive to the serious tone in her voice. "What is it?" "I am going to have a baby. Our baby. Probably in October or early November." Yates's face went through a series of expressions, shock and joy and fear flickering across his features. "A baby. We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" "Happy," he laughed, pulling her close. "Sarah, I am terrified and overjoyed and overwhelmed." "A baby. Our child." "Yes, I am happy. I am incredibly happy." They sat together in the fading light, Yates's hand resting on Sarah's still flat stomach, both contemplating the magnitude of bringing a new life into their world. Sarah felt a deep contentment settle over her. A year ago, she had been alone and desperate, her future bleak. Now she had a husband she loved deeply, a home she had helped build, work that gave her purpose, and a baby on the way. The shame and scandal that had defined her existence in Philadelphia seemed like a distant dream, part of someone else's life. "Have I told you lately that I love you?" Yates asked. "Not since this morning," Sarah teased. "Then I am falling behind. I love you, Sarah Crawford. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I thank whatever forces of fate brought you to Lone Pine, even under terrible circumstances. I love you too. And I am glad I came here, glad that Gunderson rejected me, glad for every step that led me to you." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer months. Sarah continued working as long as she was able, then gradually transitioned to lighter tasks as her belly grew. Martha was an invaluable source of advice and support, having recently gone through the experience herself. The two women had become close friends, and Sarah was grateful for her presence. In September, Sarah received an unexpected letter. It was from Mrs. Morrison in Lone Pine, and inside was a clipping from a Philadelphia newspaper. Sarah's hands shook as she read it. The banker's son, who had destroyed her reputation, had been arrested for embezzlement and fraud. In the ensuing investigation, his character had been thoroughly examined, and several women had come forward with stories of his harassment and the lies he had told about them when they rejected his advances. Sarah's name was mentioned as one of his victims, and the article made clear that the accusations against her had been fabricated lies. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, tears streaming down her face. After all this time, after she had built a new life and moved past the shame, here was vindication. Proof that she had been telling the truth all along. Yates came in from the barn, took one look at her face, and rushed to her side. "What is wrong? Is it the baby?" "No, the baby is fine. Read this." She handed him the article. He read it slowly, his expression darkening as he understood the implications. When he finished, he set the clipping down and pulled Sarah into his arms. "I'm glad the truth came out. But Sarah, you know it does not matter to me, right? Even if this had never been published, even if the world never knew those accusations were lies, I would still love you. I would still know the truth of who you are. I know. But it still feels good to be vindicated, to know that anyone from my old life who reads this will know I was innocent. You were always innocent, and you are also so much more than innocent or guilty or any of those binary judgments. You are strong and brave and kind. You are my wife and partner. You are about to be the mother of my child. Those are the truths that matter." Sarah nodded, wiping her tears. "You are right. The past is truly past now. Everything that matters is here in this moment, in this life we have built." In early November, just as the first snows were beginning to dust the high peaks, Sarah went into labor. It was faster than Martha's labor had been, intense but mercifully brief. Martha assisted while Yates paced outside, and just after midnight, a baby's cry announced the arrival of a new life. "It is a boy," Martha called through the door. "A healthy baby boy." Yates burst into the room, his face alight with joy and wonder. Sarah, exhausted but elated, held their son in her arms. The baby had a shock of dark hair like his father and Sarah's blue eyes, though Martha warned those might change. "He is perfect," Yates breathed, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. The infant's fingers closed around his, gripping with surprising strength. "He is absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" Sarah asked. They had discussed names extensively but had not settled on anything definite. Now, looking at their son, Yates said, "What about Michael? Michael Crawford?" "Michael," Sarah repeated, trying it out. "I like it. Michael Yates Crawford." "No," Yates said softly. "Michael Peter Crawford, after the man who stood by me when I needed help, who helped me build this ranch and this life." Sarah smiled. "Pete will cry when you tell him." "Probably." but he deserves the honor. True to Sarah's prediction, Pete did cry when they told him the next day. He held little Michael with reverent care, his tough exterior cracking completely as the baby gripped his finger just as he had his father's. The first months of Michael's life were exhausting. Sarah had thought ranch work was demanding, but nothing compared to the relentless needs of an infant. Feeding, changing, comforting, all on a schedule dictated by the baby rather than the clock. But Yates was a devoted father, taking the night feedings whenever he could, walking the floor with Michael when he fussed, changing diapers without complaint. "I thought you would be less hands-on," Sarah admitted one night, watching him rock their son back to sleep. "Most men leave the baby care entirely to their wives." "Most men are fools," Yates replied quietly. "He is my son. I want to know him, bond with him, be part of his life from the very beginning. Besides, you work as hard as I do during the day. Why should you handle all the night work too?" Sarah's love for her husband deepened even further. He consistently surprised her with his fairness and his willingness to defy expectations of masculine behavior when it meant being a better partner and father. Winter settled in again, their second winter together, but this time Sarah felt secure and happy despite the cold and isolation. They had weathered so much together, survived external threats and internal adjustments, built something solid and enduring. Michael thrived, growing rapidly, his personality emerging more each day. He was a happy baby, quick to smile, curious about everything. In March, a letter arrived from the territorial capital. The investigation into Cass Brennan had concluded with his arrest on multiple charges. He had been sentenced to 5 years in prison, and his ranch was being sold to pay restitution to his victims. Yates and Sarah read the letter together, relief washing over them. "It is truly over," Sarah said. "The threats, the fear, all of it. We can focus on building now, not just defending what we have," Yates agreed. "I was thinking, with Brennan's ranch being sold, we might be able to purchase some of his land, expand our operation." "Do we need to expand?" "No, but it would provide more security, more buffer against hard times. And maybe someday Michael will want a ranch too, and he will need land of his own." They discussed it over the following weeks and eventually purchased a section of Brennan's former property, good grazing land with reliable water. It was a significant investment, but one that positioned the Running Creek Ranch for long-term success. As Michael grew into a toddler, Sarah marveled at how completely her life had transformed. She was now an integral part of the ranching community, invited to church socials and quilting bees, respected for her hard work and her courage in facing down Brennan. The whispers about her past had faded, replaced by recognition of who she was now, not who she had been or who others had claimed she was. On their second wedding anniversary, Yates took Sarah back to the high meadow where he had first told her he loved her. It was October, the same season as their wedding, and the autumn colors were brilliant against the blue sky. They left Michael with Martha and Pete and rode out together, just the two of them. At the meadow, they dismounted and stood looking out over the valley. The Running Creek Ranch spread below them, expanded now with new buildings and larger herds, a testament to their hard work and success. 2 years ago, I stood in a dusty street with nothing but a carpetbag and $17, convinced my life was over, Sarah said. Now look at me, look at us. I have a husband I adore, a beautiful son, a home I love, work that fulfills me. I have everything I never dared to dream I could have. You have everything you deserve, Yates corrected. You were always worthy of this life, Sarah. You just needed to find people who could see that. You saw it. You saw me when I could barely see myself. He pulled her close. We saw each other. That is what love is, I think. Not just accepting someone despite their flaws or past, but seeing the truth of who they are and loving that truth. "You are a philosopher now," Sarah teased. "I have my moments." He kissed her, slow and deep. "I love you, Sarah Crawford, more today than the day we married, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." That is quite a claim. It is a promise. They stood together in the afternoon sun, holding each other, contemplating the life they had built and the future that stretched ahead. Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her here, the pain and shame and fear that had driven her across the country. She would not change it now, even if she could. Every hardship had been necessary, every loss a step toward finding what she did not know she was searching for. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For whispering the truth I needed to hear, that my past did not define me here. That I could be whoever I chose to be. You gave me permission to leave the shame behind and build something new. You did the building, Sarah. I just provided the space. We built it together. That is the point, together." Years passed, measured in seasons and cattle drives, in birthdays and harvests. Michael grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved the ranch and followed his father everywhere, learning the land and the work. 2 years after Michael's birth, Sarah had a daughter, Emma, who had Sarah's blonde hair and Yates's gray eyes. 3 years after that came another son, Thomas, who was quieter than his siblings but just as determined. The Running Creek Ranch prospered, growing slowly but steadily into one of the most successful operations in the territory. Yates and Pete expanded carefully, never overextending, building a reputation for quality cattle and honest dealing. Sarah managed the household and helped with the livestock, served as unofficial teacher for the children since the nearest school was too far for daily attendance, and became known throughout the region as someone who could be counted on in a crisis. She occasionally thought about her life in Philadelphia, but it seemed like something that had happened to someone else in another lifetime. She had no regrets, no lingering bitterness. The banker's son had actually done her a favor, though she doubted he saw it that way from his prison cell. By destroying her reputation in Philadelphia, he had freed her to find her true home and her true self. On their 10th wedding anniversary, the community held a celebration in Lone Pine. Nearly the entire territory turned out, it seemed, to honor the Crawfords and their decade of success and contribution to the region. People gave speeches praising Yates's integrity and Sarah's strength, telling stories about their generosity and leadership. During the dancing, Yates pulled Sarah close and whispered, "Are you happy?" Deliriously, she replied. "You." Every single day, he spun her around, making her laugh. "I love you, Sarah. I love you too. Thank you for seeing past the shame to the woman underneath. Thank you for letting me." They danced under the Montana stars, surrounded by friends and community, their children playing nearby, their life full and rich and exactly what both had needed without knowing they needed it. Many more years passed. The children grew and eventually made their own choices. Michael stayed on the ranch, taking over more responsibilities as Yates aged, eventually building his own house on the property and bringing home a wife. Emma became a teacher, opening a school in Lone Pine and marrying a young doctor who moved to the territory. Thomas surprised everyone by going to university in the East, studying law, then returning to Montana to practice, dedicated to protecting the rights of small ranchers and native peoples. Sarah and Yates grew old together, their hair turning gray, their bodies marked by years of hard work, but their love only deepening with time. They had weathered droughts and harsh winters, cattle diseases and economic downturns, personal losses and community tragedies. Through everything, they had been each other's constant support and comfort. On a warm evening in their 35th year of marriage, They sat on the porch of the house they had built and expanded over the decades, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Their grandchildren played in the yard, 5 of them now with more on the way. The ranch continued to thrive under Michael's management, and the family they had created had spread roots deep into Montana territory, which had achieved statehood while they watched. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Sarah asked, her hand in Yates's as it had been countless times before. "Sometimes. If Gunderson had not rejected you, if I had not been in town that day, if I had not offered you work. So many small moments that could have gone differently. I am glad they did not. I am glad every step led me here to you, to this life. No regrets, not a single one. You," Yates lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "My only regret is that I cannot live it all over again, every moment, exactly as it happened." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of the setting sun on her face and the strength of her husband's presence beside her. She thought about the young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in Lone Pine all those years ago, broken and ashamed and terrified. That woman would hardly recognize the person Sarah had become, confident and respected, surrounded by love and family and purpose. But in a way, that young woman was still part of her, still present in the compassion Sarah showed to others facing judgment and hardship. The shame she had carried had been transformed into empathy, the fear into courage, the loneliness into a deep appreciation for connection and community. "Your past does not define you here," Yates had whispered to her so long ago, and those words had become the foundation of everything that followed. Not just for Sarah, but for their children and grandchildren, who grew up knowing that who you are matters more than where you came from. That character is built through actions, not inherited through circumstance. That love and hard work can overcome almost anything. As darkness fell, and the stars emerged one by one, Sarah and Yates remained on the porch, content to sit in companionable silence. Michael came out to ask about some ranch business. Emma's husband stopped by with a patient from town who needed quiet to recover. Thomas arrived unexpectedly with news about a case he had won protecting a native family's land rights. The house filled with voices and activity, love and purpose. Later, in the privacy of their bedroom, Yates held Sarah close. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For taking a chance on me, on this life. For being brave enough to leave the past behind and build something new. For being my partner in every sense of the word. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. For believing in me when I did not believe in myself. For loving me not despite my past, but without regard to it. You showed me that redemption is not something you earn, but something you allow yourself to receive." They kissed, tender and familiar, a kiss exchanged between people who knew each other completely and loved each other without reservation. And then, as they had done for 35 years, they fell asleep in each other's arms, grateful for the life they had built and the love that had made it all possible. The years continued to pass, bringing with them the inevitable challenges of aging. But Sarah and Yates faced them together, just as they had faced everything else. When Yates's joints grew stiff from decades of hard work, Sarah was there to help him with the tasks that had become difficult. When Sarah's eyesight dimmed, making her beloved reading difficult, Yates read to her every evening, his voice still strong and steady. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, a family that had spread throughout Montana and beyond, but always traced its roots back to the Running Creek Ranch. The celebration was held at the ranch itself, which had been expanded and modernized, but still retained the essential character Yates and Sarah had established. During the celebration, their grandchildren asked Sarah to tell the story of how she and Yates met. It had become a family legend, told and retold, but they never tired of hearing it from Sarah herself. "I came to Montana Territory with nothing but shame and a carpetbag," Sarah began, her voice still clear despite her years. "I had been judged and found wanting by people who did not know me, condemned for circumstances beyond my control. I expected Montana to be the same, just another place where my past would define my future. But then I met your grandfather, and he said something that changed everything. He said my past did not define me here, that I could be whoever I chose to be. And he meant it. He gave me the space to heal, to grow, to become the person I was meant to be all along." "Grandmother made herself," Yates added, his hand finding Sarah's as it always did. "I just had the good sense to recognize what she was capable of and fall in love with her." The grandchildren, ranging from teenagers to toddlers, listened with rapt attention. Some had heard the story dozens of times, but it never lost its power. It was their origin story, the foundation myth of their family, and it taught them that worth was inherent, not assigned, that grace could triumph over judgment, and that love could heal almost any wound. That night, after everyone had gone home or retired to guest rooms, Sarah and Yates sat alone on the porch one more time. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the night air was sweet with the scent of hay and earth and growing things. 50 years, Sarah marveled. "It seems like both forever and no time at all." "I know what you mean. Some days I still see you as that young woman stepping down from the stagecoach, trying so hard to be brave despite being terrified. Other days, I cannot remember a time when you were not beside me. We have had a good life, Yates, the best life, better than I ever imagined possible." They sat in silence for a while, then Sarah said, "I am not afraid of dying." Yates stiffened beside her. "Sarah, I am not saying it is imminent, just that I have been thinking about it. We are both old, Yates. We will not be here forever. But I am not afraid because I know I lived fully. I experienced real love, built something meaningful, raised good children who are raising good children. The shame I carried when I arrived here is long gone, transformed into something better. If I died tomorrow, I would have no regrets." "I would have one," Yates said quietly. "I would regret not having one more day with you, one more conversation, one more sunset. I will always want one more day with you, Sarah." She squeezed his hand. "Then we will have to live as long as possible, so you do not have to regret anything." "Deal." They lived several more years, growing increasingly frail but never losing the essential connection that had defined their marriage. They died within months of each other, Yates first, slipping away peacefully in his sleep, and Sarah following not long after, as if she could not bear to be apart from him for long. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the Running Creek Ranch, their graves marked with simple stones that bore their names, dates, and a single inscription that Sarah had requested. Her past did not define her here. The ranch continued under Michael's stewardship and eventually passed to his children. The family grew and spread, but they always returned to the Running Creek Ranch for important occasions, maintaining the connection to the place where it all began. Sarah's story became family lore, told to each new generation as a reminder that shame and judgment need not be permanent, that grace and love could redeem any past, that who you choose to be matters more than who others say you are. Young women facing their own challenges would hear about great-grandmother Sarah and draw strength from her example. Men struggling with their own sense of honor and integrity would remember great-grandfather Yates and his fundamental decency. In the small cemetery overlooking the ranch, The two simple stones stood as testament to a love that had transcended scandal and shame, that had built something enduring from the ruins of broken dreams. The inscription, "Her past did not define her here," served as both epitaph and invitation, a reminder that the frontier had offered not just land, but the chance to be remade, to shed old identities, and build new ones based on character rather than circumstances. And so the story lived on, told and retold, gaining new resonance with each telling, inspiring each new generation to believe that redemption was possible, that love could heal, and that the past, no matter how painful, need not dictate the future. Sarah Peterson, who had arrived in Lone Pine, Montana territory with nothing but shame and $17, had found not just a new life but her true self. And in finding herself, she had helped build a legacy that would endure long after the physical traces of her existence had faded. The Running Creek Ranch still stood, more than a century after Yates had first claimed the land, a living monument to the power of second chances and the transformative nature of unconditional love. And somewhere in the Montana wind, in the rustling of cottonwood leaves and the call of meadowlarks, the echo of Yates's whispered promise remained. Your past does not define you here. Your past does not define you here.